All right, so for this video, we are going to be looking at a guy named Yune. He is a Korean actor. He is an actor, a screenwriter, and he's also famous for being in the very first Fast and Furious. And yeah, we're going to see where he will be ranked. So his overall facial rating is a 6.3. How rare is that? That is 1 in 11 people. He is within the top 9 percentile. His side facial score is 34%. His front facial score is 56%. His total facial harmony is 47%. His facial dimorphism is a 5. Body fat factors is a 9.5. And miscellaneous features is a 7. The tier list is to the right side. Tier 1 is ideal. Tier 2 is near ideal. Tier 3 is normal. Tier 4 is a slight fall. Tier 5 is a flaw. Tier 6 is a huge flaw. Tier 7 breaks harmony. And for this video, we are going to look mostly at his side view profile to see why his side view is way less than his frontal view. So yeah. All right, so before I start on his side view profile, I just wanted to explain his miscellaneous features that I have noticed and what I have deducted, because I gave him his miscellaneous features a 7, is because of his curved jaw. So his jaw is slightly curved. He does also lack eyebrow density, and he does have nasolabial folds around his mouth to nose, around that area. So kind of like when you notice it more when he smiles as well. And also it's probably due to his age, and he is middle age. So yeah. All right, so now we're looking at his side view profile. There's a couple of things that I have noticed, and one thing that he is lacking in is that he has a very flat facial appearance. So what's considered to be flat is anything around 178, about 178 and higher. So if your facial convexity overall is 178 degrees or higher, you'll be considered having a very flat face. Now, having a flat facial convexity doesn't mean that, is considered to be completely unattractive or anything like that. It's just usually more rounder facial convexities is more appealing to the average person. And one of the main reasons why he does have a flat facial convexity is because he also has a maxilla that is non-protrusive. So going from the orbital vector all the way down to the alar position of his nose, there's no distance between that orbital vector and the alar base of his nose. And another thing too is, and this is the main thing about his face being very flat, and what it is that his brow bone protrudes so far out that it creates this angle. So what happens here is that instead of his brow bone going like this to where it has a slight curve, it has too much of, it's too pronounced. And having a brow bone that's way too pronounced is going to make your face look Neanderthalic and almost kind of like a caveman like appearance. And yeah, this is just too much of brow bossing right here, and that is not attractive at all. And you will be deducted points for having that in terms of these measurements right here. So yeah. And another thing too is also the brow inclination as well. So it does affect that area as well. But the brow bossing is by far his the part that kind of deducts a lot of points in terms of these measurements right here. So yeah, but majority of it is because of his facial convexity being flat. And one more thing that I do want to point out too is, and I will discuss it later with the facial convexity, most people have a concave facial convexity, right? Or my fault, not a concave, a convex facial convexity, right? So usually their facial convexity is more like this. So it's convex. So it has this sort of appearance to where it kind of curves inwards. But for his actually curves outwards, almost kind of like a spoon. I know this is not the best way to put it, but um, your face isn't supposed to curve out like a spoon or like a full crescent moon or something. I don't know. It just you don't want that at all, because that at that point you'll be deducted all points. And yeah, so those are the things that I just wanted to point out for his facial convexity. And also, this is kind of like a unique feature. Most people don't really have a facial convexity that's over 180. So for him to have a facial convexity that's that high is will be considered a unique feature, but nevertheless, it's still a flaw. All right, so his nasal tip is a tier 6, 147 degrees. This is not too big of a surprise, honestly. It's pretty obvious that you can tell that his nose is very rounded towards the end of it. And yeah, so, and also his nose isn't really too projected. So that is part of the reason why his nasal tip is very rounded. And, you know, it could be also just an ethnic thing as well. But yeah, so he does lose all points for having a nasal tip that is very bulbous. All right, so the brow ridge inclination is at 29 degrees. At this point, you will be deducted points for it. And honestly, I believe I've seen worse than this, but this is not an attractive trait at all. Like I said again, the brow ridge, his brow bone comes a little too far out, and like I said, it will affect other measurements, not just this one. And once you have a trait that is so it deviates so much, it can, like I said again, it's like a chain reaction with a lot of these measurements. It can affect other measurements as well. So that brow bone is single-handedly is going to affect multiple measurements. So having one bad facial characteristics can affect other measurements. So yeah, so like I said again, that brow bossing, it is a unique feature, but it's going to hinder him in the long run. All right, so the nasal facial angle, this is the inner angle, and it goes from the chin all the way to the chin to the nasion, and going all the way from the nasion, following the whole ridge of the nose, or the nasal bridge of the nose. And this is pretty much looking at the mid-face projection. And also, like I said, he does have a maxilla that's non-protrusive, and with that as well, his nose isn't projected as well. So he does have a very forwardly grown mandible, but his mid-face isn't really forwardly grown. So like I said, the maxilla and his nose isn't very projected too far out. So what is going to happen is going to create a very flat appearance. Now, to put this into perspective, what is considered average when it comes to nasofacial convexity is anything that is 30, between 30 and 40 is considered average or normal. His is actually 27, so that is not normal. I've seen some people that are 29, but 27 is very, very low. And he does have a lower third that's projected, but his mid third isn't that projected to where it needs to be to create that attractive angle that you need. And so he gets deducted points for this as well. The nasomental angle is the outer version of the nasofacial angle, and it still measures the nose and the chin, and also it takes into account his facial convexity as well. So his facial convexity is flat anyways, so we kind of can expect a similar measurement in terms of facial flatness. So anything above 132 is going to be deducted even more points, and on top of that, anything above 132 is going to be a flaw for the most part. So his is actually 138. Now, it might not seem like it's too big of a deviation, but anything above 132 is literally going to lose a tier. So that's why he gets a tier 6 for this. And like I said, his lower third is very protrusive, but his middle third is not protrusive. And then we're going to get towards the upper third when we talk about the facial convexity. So yeah, so If his maxilla was just grown a little bit more, I feel like that could have brought this angle a little bit more tighter. And yeah, so like I said again, the maxilla and the brow bone are the main two flaws that are hindering his attractiveness rating in the side view profile. So yeah. All right, so the recession relative to the Frankfurt plane angle. Now, like I said again, he clearly has a chin. He has a long mandible. It's past the nasion and also it's past the brow bone. Now, another thing too is we got to imagine this too. So his lower third is extremely long. Another thing that could kind of compensate for this is if he did have a reduction of the jaw. I feel like a reduction of the jaw can actually help his facial convexity as well. So he does have a very long mandible, and I believe that if he could lower that mandible a bit, that could help a lot of these other measurements as well. So it's not only just the maxilla or the nasal projection or the brow bone, but it's also that lower third of his face, that the mandible as well. So those are the three main points, I guess you can say, that that will be considered your facial or your total facial convexity, which we will get to later. But yeah, so he does have a pretty long mandible, which is a good sign of having forward growth of the lower portion of your face. All right, so let's get to the front view side of things, and let's start off with the eyebrow settiness. Now, before I even start with that, y'all remember when I said that I took some points off for his eyebrow density? Now, even though his eyebrows are like noticeable, is not dark enough to where I would consider it to be somewhere attractive. I feel like his eyebrows can be a bit darker. Now, if this was for a female, I probably would have left that miscellaneous feature alone, only because females can get away with having less denser eyebrows than men on average. So yeah, so I did take some points off for his eyebrows being less dense. Now he has a tier 5 for this rating that I gave him, and which is at 1.58. Now his eyebrows are just a little bit too far apart from his actual eyes, and to get and this is also part of the masculinity as well. If his eyebrows were a little bit more closer to his eyes and a little bit more lower set, I feel like that could have helped him tremendously with this measurement. So yeah. All right, so the mouth to nose width ratio is 1.30 or 1.3, which is a tier 3. Now, one thing that I noticed is he does have a very small mouth, and his nose is wide. So, and I've noticed this with a lot of Asian men too, is that they will have a mouth that is not that wide, but a nose that is wide. And the measurements that I usually get are a smaller ratio, and it will be outside of the ideal range typically because of the nose being very, very wide in terms of width. Now, another thing to put into perspective is that I don't want to spoil it yet because I haven't gone through the measurement, but his eyes are more closer set. And just to put this into perspective, his mouth width is still smaller than his eyes. So the mouth is actually supposed to be within the inner iris of the eyes, but as you can see, his mouth is actually still kind of inside of the inner iris of the eyes and not like on it. So kind of like right here around that portion. So this is kind of touching the iris, but this is not. And obviously the nose is actually past the metiocanthus of his eyes. So yeah, so these ratios are pretty they're kind of off a little bit, but yeah, this is not too big of a this is normal in reason, but this is not like a massive flaw or anything like that. This is kind of like normal, but you're not gonna get deducted too many points for this though. The eye spacing is 1.17. This is a tier 4. This is gonna be a slight flaw. And another thing too that I noticed too, I've been noticing like patterns with people who have eyes that are more closer set, and this is compared to the width of their head. So In terms of ESR, if your eyes are more closer set relative to the width of your head, this is one thing that I've noticed is that typically with the eye spacing is that their eye spacing in between is actually more wider than their eye width. And I don't know why that is, but yeah, I guess it can kind of compensate for the ESR being that bad sometimes, but usually their eye spacing is more wider than their eye width, and his being at 1.17 is kind of way off. Um, but I mean, I've seen worse though. But usually you don't want that eye width to be too far out because it's just not deemed to be attractive at all. And anything too small as well is going to be just as bad. All right, so the next one is the canthal tilt, and his is at 6.5. 6.5 is very highly tilted, and most celebrities don't even pass the canthal tilt for whatever reason. Usually they'll range between 2.5 to 3.5, but his is twice that range. And yeah, so that is a great plus. And also, this is not surprising. And also, like I said, he is Korean, so this is kind of typical of what I see in those groups of people that I've been measuring. And yeah, so this is actually a plus for him. His facial thirds is a tier 4, and the main reason why that is because of the top portion of his head is actually really small. So 27 degrees or 27 percent deviates, what is that, 6% away from 33%, when it should only deviate 3% away from 33%. So that's the reason why he gets a tier 4. The other 2/3 are not really that bad. Obviously, you want your lower third to be the most dominant third, preferably, which his is, and that is also a good thing. And then we got the eye separation ratio, and his eyes are a little bit on the closer side. So preferably, you want your eyes to be around 45 to 46%. Obviously, his is at 43%, which is closer. And like I said, something that kind of helps that kind of balance that out is the one eye spacing apart, which his is a little bit more wider. But that could be due to a whole plethora of things why his eye separation is this wide. Maybe it's because of the width of his head. And yeah. And speaking of the width of his head, he gets a tier 3 for 1.26. Now, a tier 3 is still somewhat normal in reason. The only problem is that if you have a head size that is this small, it's gonna start looking like a mannequin size head, or like just almost like a ball in a way. So his head is not that long. And another thing that's weird too is because he does have a pretty thick neck, so it's gonna even look more like a ball, and it's gonna have this like weird appearance to where the neck is almost as big as the head, and it looks like your head is too small for your body. It has that little weird appearance going on to it as well. So that is something that you don't want to have, because it kind of gives this little weird appearance going on with it. And yeah, but his head is on the shorter side of things, so that is another unique feature that he does have. All right, so this is going to be the last measurement. It is the total facial convexity. He gets a tier 5 for this. This is completely way off. I'm not going to lie to y'all. 157 degrees is way off of the ideal range, and this is extremely flat. He's probably like one of the flattest facial convexities or total facial convexities I've seen. And like I've said, those 3 points, the brow bone, the nasal projection, and the maxilla, and also the chin. So those are the 3 areas that I've explained: the brow bone right over here, the maxilla and the nasal projection right here, and then the lower third projection, which is including the mandible bone and the chin as well. And this is too flat. It needs to be more angular. It has to have a more angular appearance to your face. Sharp angles make the best faces, and he does not have that, unfortunately. So yeah, So make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, make sure to hit me up on IG, and DM me if you want to get your face rated. It's only going to take me 2 to 3 days for you to get your rating. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace.